I gave my son a kidney to save him, and he sold my home. I thought that was the ultimate betrayal, but what I discovered was far worse. It wasn't just a simple transaction. It was a part of a dirty scheme that jeopardized not only me, but everyone around me. The surgeon's words echoed in my head, a rhythmic chant of sterile hope. The transplant was a success. He's going to make a full recovery, Mrs. Harrison. I smiled, a tired, watery smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. It was worth it. Every jab of the IV, every agonizing ache in my side, every sleepless night leading up to the surgery. It was all worth it to see my son, Michael, healthy again. My own health was a secondary concern. He was my only child, my whole world since his father passed. His kidneys had been failing for years, a slow and cruel decline that had hollowed out his vibrant spirit. When the doctors told me I was a perfect match, there was no hesitation. I'd give him my last breath if he needed it. A mother's love isn't a transaction. It's a foundation. Or so I believed. It had been 4 weeks since the surgery. I was still recovering, my movements slow and cautious, but my heart was full. Michael had been discharged a week prior, and he was staying with his wife, Sarah, in their cramped apartment across town. They promised to come get me as soon as I was strong enough to travel. I missed him fiercely, and I missed my life, which had been put on hold. My art studio, with its half-finished canvas of a sunset over Lake Michigan, felt a world away. I had been planning my first ever art show, a dream I had been nurturing for years. The show was scheduled for next month, and I was excited to finally share my passion with the world. Life was looking up, wasn't it? A new chapter for both of us, Michael with his new lease on life, and me with my artistic aspirations. The phone rang, jolting me from my reverie. It was Sarah. "Elaine?" she said, her voice unusually high-pitched. "We're on our way. Michael wants to show you something." "Oh, wonderful," I said, a wave of warmth washing over me. "I can't wait to see you both." The moment they walked through the door, my stomach twisted into a knot. Michael wasn't smiling. His face was a mask of strained politeness, a look I'd only ever seen him wear at uncomfortable family gatherings. Sarah, with her perfectly coiffed blonde hair and impeccably manicured nails, looked like she was about to deliver bad news. My heart started to pound a frantic rhythm against my ribs. "Mom," Michael began, his words stiff and formal, "we have something to tell you." I braced myself. My mind raced through 100 scenarios, each one worse than the last. Had the transplant failed? Was he sick again? "We decided it's time for you to downsize," Sarah cut in, her tone brisk and devoid of any warmth. "This house is simply too big for one person, and Michael and I need a place with more space for when we start our family." I stared at them, speechless. They weren't just suggesting I move. Their words were heavy with an unspoken finality. The house, my sanctuary, the place I had raised Michael and where I had lived for over 30 years, felt suddenly foreign. I looked from Michael to Sarah, searching for a hint of a joke, a glimmer of the son I knew, but there was nothing. It was just a cold, calculated transaction. My kidney, for a place to live. That's what it was. What a brilliant, cruel bargain. "What are you talking about?" I finally managed to say, my voice a thin whisper. "We sold it, Mom," Michael said, his eyes fixed on a spot over my shoulder. "The papers went through this morning." The air in the room grew thin, and the floor seemed to tilt beneath me. "Sold it? My house? Without my knowledge? Without my consent?" It was a betrayal so profound, so gut-wrenching, it left me physically reeling. The sheer audacity of it, the cold-blooded lack of empathy was something I couldn't comprehend. I had given him a part of my body, a part of my life, and he had repaid me by taking away my home? My home filled with memories of his childhood, of his father, of my life's work? A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "Sold it? How? It's my name on the deed." Michael shifted uncomfortably. Remember those papers you signed for the hospital? The ones for the insurance and the surgery? My mind reeled back, replaying the chaotic, pain-filled moments before the operation. I was groggy from the pre-op medication, trusting him implicitly. I had signed a stack of documents without reading them. I had trusted my own son. That was my mistake. "You had me sign over the deed," I stated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "It was a business decision, Mom," Michael said, the same detached tone he used to discuss stocks. "The market is hot and we got a great offer. Besides, we found you a lovely little trailer to live in. It's close to the new property we're buying." A trailer. They had taken my spacious and sun-filled home and replaced it with a trailer. The world spun. This wasn't a family conversation. It was a hostile takeover. This wasn't my son. This was a stranger wearing his face. I was just a walking ATM, a spare parts dispenser for their convenience. The tears that had been welling up finally spilled over, hot and salty against my skin. I didn't cry for the house. I cried for the loss of the boy I thought I had raised. I cried for the family I thought I had. It was a cruel joke. I had given so much, only to lose everything. The worst part was that I was trapped. I had no strength, no money, and now no home. I was at their mercy. "What about my art?" I asked, my voice cracking. "My studio? My canvas?" "Oh, we'll get it out of the way for the new owners," Sarah said, waving a dismissive hand. "It's just a bunch of old paintings anyway." Just a bunch of old paintings. My life's work. The dismissiveness was a slap in the face. It wasn't just a house they were taking. It was my identity, my future. They were trying to erase me. I had a moment of clarity, a flash of insight amidst the chaos. I wasn't just a victim. I was the protagonist of my own story, and this was where the fight began. I just had to figure out how to start. I had to let everyone know my story. If you're going through something similar, you can find a lot of support and understanding right here. Just subscribe to my channel to hear more. The betrayal was just the beginning. The plan they had for me was far more sinister, and I had no idea what was coming next. You won't want to miss how I managed to get back at them in the next part. The silence in the room was heavier than a wet blanket. Michael and Sarah stood there, a united front of utter indifference. I, on the other hand, felt like I was unraveling, the very fabric of my world being torn to shreds. I tried to find my voice, but it was just a rasp. The shock was a physical thing, a cold numbness that had settled into my bones. You sold my home?" I finally managed, the words a broken whisper. "My home? The one I spent 30 years paying for? The one your father helped me build?" Michael shifted his weight, his eyes still avoiding mine. "It was just a house, Mom. We need to look forward. This is an investment for our future family. It's for the best." "For the best?" I scoffed, a bitter laugh bubbling up. "For the best for whom? You and your wife? What about me? Where am I supposed to go?" "The trailer, Mom. We already told you. It's all set up. It's got a bed and a bathroom. What more do you need?" "What more do I need?" The question hung in the air, a testament to the chasm between us. They saw a house as a commodity, an asset to be liquidated. I saw it as the sum of my life, the garden where I taught Michael how to ride a bike, the kitchen where his father and I had shared countless meals, the studio where I had poured my heart and soul into my art. They were not just selling a property, they were erasing a lifetime of memories. And they did it for a business decision. The sheer arrogance and lack of compassion were breathtaking. My mind raced back to the days after my surgery. I was at my most vulnerable. I had just given a part of myself, literally, for my son. I was weak, recovering, and utterly trusting, and they had capitalized on it, using my love and my pain against me. "You didn't just sell my house," I said, my voice gaining strength with every word. "You stole from me. You stole my life's work. You took advantage of me when I was at my lowest."
That's a bit dramatic, don't you think, Elaine? Sarah said, a thin, patronizing smile on her face. You signed the papers. It was all legal. Legal. The word tasted like poison. I had trusted my son, my own flesh and blood, and he had exploited that trust with the cold efficiency of a corporate shark. He'd looked me in the eye, told me those documents were for my medical care, and watched me sign away my home. My own heart started to ache, a pain that had nothing to do with the surgery and everything to do with this betrayal. Get out, I said, my voice now a low, dangerous rumble. Just get out. Get your things, whatever you came for, and leave. His face flushed. Mom, don't be like this. We're a family. We can work through this. A family? I scoffed. A family doesn't do this to each other. A family doesn't steal, doesn't lie, and doesn't discard one of their own like a broken piece of furniture. You're not my son. You're a stranger, a user, and a thief. And you, I said, turning to Sarah, who had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable, are his enabler. Now leave. I need to think. They left without another word, the door closing with a soft final click. I sank onto the couch, the silence deafening. The anger, the shock, and the sorrow all crashed over me in a tidal wave. I had no home, no security, no money, and worst of all, no family. I was alone. But as I sat there, something shifted inside me. The tears stopped, the fear subsided, a fierce, icy resolve took its place. They thought I was a fragile old woman they could push around. They thought they had won. They were wrong. I had my mind, my spirit, and the knowledge that I had done a heroic thing. I had saved my son. He sold my house. The balance of power was not what it seemed. I might have lost the battle, but the war had just begun. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. Not a chance in hell. I would fight them, and I would make sure the whole world knew what they did. My so-called family had no idea what they had just unleashed. The woman they thought they could break was just getting started, and the first shot was about to be fired. The next day, I woke up to the jarring reality that I was now a woman without a home, yet still in my home. A paradox so cruel it felt like a sick joke. I had a few hours left before the new owners were to arrive to inspect the property, a fact Michael had so generously reminded me of via a curt text message. The emotional wounds were still fresh, but the shock had been replaced by a simmering rage, a fire in my belly that was a far more potent fuel than tears. I wasn't going to just sit on the curb and wait for them to throw me out. I was going to fight. My first thought was the police. I dialed the 9 emergency number, my hands shaking as I explained the situation to the dispatcher. My son, I said, my voice tight with frustration, had me sign over the deed to my house without my knowledge. He tricked me. The dispatcher listened patiently, and then the line went silent. I could almost hear her eyes rolling. Ma'am, she said, her voice dripping with an almost rehearsed weariness, this is a civil matter. You'll need to contact the lawyer. A civil matter. My son stealing my life's work and my home was just a civil matter? I hung up the phone, a furious laugh escaping my lips. The system, it seemed, was as broken as my trust in my own family. The next logical step was to find a lawyer. But how? I was still recovering from a major surgery. I had no access to my funds, and all my financial records were locked away on a computer I hadn't touched in weeks. I felt the pang of despair, but pushed it down. I wasn't going to let them win. I began to rummage through my old filing cabinets, hoping to find something, anything to give me an edge. I found a binder filled with old tax documents, bank statements, and a folder marked Future Plans. Inside, neatly organized and meticulously planned, were the details for my art show, the gallery, the guest list, the pieces I had chosen to display. It was a tangible reminder of the future they had tried to steal from me, and a spark of an idea began to form. My hands flew over the keyboard of my old laptop, dusty from disuse. I had a social media presence, a small but dedicated group of followers who were interested in my art. I had never used it for anything other than sharing my work, but now it felt like my only weapon. I didn't want to just expose my son. I wanted to tell a story that resonated with every person who had ever been taken for granted, who had ever been betrayed by the ones they loved. I started typing, the words flowing from my fingers with a speed and clarity I hadn't felt in years. I wrote about the surgery, about giving a part of myself to save my son. I wrote about the promise of a new beginning and then the brutal reality of his betrayal. I didn't hold back. I wrote about the coldness in his eyes, the casual cruelty of his wife, and the way they had dismissed my life's work as just a bunch of old paintings. The post was long, raw, and deeply personal. I was laying my soul bare for the world to see, and a part of me was terrified, but the other part, the part fueled by rage and a newfound sense of purpose, knew this was the only way. I had no legal recourse, but I had a powerful tool at my disposal: public opinion. I knew this was a high-risk gamble. I could be ridiculed, dismissed, or worse, but I had nothing left to lose. My dignity was on the line, and I was going to fight for it with everything I had. I ended the post with a simple question: what would you do if the son you gave a kidney to turned around and sold your house? I clicked publish and held my breath. My post was out there, a digital cry for help. I had no idea if anyone would even see it. But what happened next was a social media firestorm that changed everything. My son and his wife had no idea what they were in for.
My laptop screen, usually a window into the peaceful world of my art, had become a battlefield. My social media post, a raw and emotional account of my son's betrayal, had exploded. The notifications were coming in so fast I couldn't even read them all. Likes, shares, and comments piled up, a digital tsunami of support. People from all over the country were sharing their own stories of family betrayal, of being taken advantage of by the very people they trusted most. The comments section was a mix of outrage, sympathy, and a fierce, righteous anger on my behalf. "How could a son do this to his own mother?" one person wrote. "He's a monster, a real American psycho," another commented. Someone else had found Michael and Sarah's social media profiles and was sharing them, a digital mob forming to demand justice. The outpouring of support was both overwhelming and validating. It felt like a warm blanket in the cold reality of my situation. I was no longer alone. The story I had dared to tell, a story I had feared would be met with silence or scorn, had resonated with a universal truth: the pain of being betrayed by family. Then came the call I had been dreading. It was Michael. "Mom," he said, his voice a low, furious hiss. "What the hell is this post? Take it down, now." "Why?" I asked, my voice calm, almost detached. "Is it not true?" "It's private family business," he sputtered. "You're humiliating me. You're making me look like a bad person." "You did that all by yourself, Michael," I retorted, the sarcasm a cool, refreshing drink after the emotional desert I'd been living in. "I'm just telling the truth. The world needed to know what you did to your mother, the woman who literally gave a part of herself for you." "You had a deal. You signed the papers," he said, his voice cracking with a mix of rage and panic. "I signed the papers you put in front of me when I was in a drug-induced haze, preparing to give you a piece of my body," I shot back. "That's not a deal, Michael. That's a scam. And you're a con artist." The conversation deteriorated from there. A litany of his accusations and my cold, hard truths. He couldn't grasp that the business decision he had made was an emotional and moral catastrophe for me. He was so focused on the financial gain that he had completely failed to see the human cost. He hung up on me, but a few minutes later, Sarah called. "Elaine, this is getting out of hand," she said, her voice smooth and manipulative. "Think about Michael's career. Think about his reputation. Do you really want to ruin your own son over a house?" "It's not a house, Sarah," I said, my voice rising. "It's my home. It's my life. And he's already ruined himself. I'm just making sure everyone knows about it." She threatened me, saying that if I didn't take down the post, they would make sure I never saw them again,
Not even to say goodbye. The old me, the woman who lived for her son, might have crumbled. But this new me, forged in the fire of betrayal, just laughed. You don't get it, do you? You already did that when you sold my home. You broke my heart. There's nothing left for you to take. I hung up the phone. I sat there, staring at the screen, watching the numbers of shares and likes continue to climb. They were just the beginning. I had a long way to go, but for the first time in a month, I felt a surge of hope. This wasn't just about getting my house back. It was about standing up for myself, about fighting for the respect and dignity that they had so carelessly tried to take from me. I had given a part of myself to save my son's life. He had repaid me with betrayal. Now it was time for the next act, and they had no idea what was coming. They had threatened to cut me off, but what they didn't know was that my story had already caught the attention of someone with the power to expose their deception to an even wider audience. You won't believe who reached out to me and what she offered to do.
The digital storm my post had created was just the warm-up act. As I sat at my kitchen table, still surrounded by the ghosts of a life I had so carefully built, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. It was a New York area code. I hesitated, then answered. Elaine Harrison? A crisp, professional voice asked. My name is Linda Sterling. I'm a producer for The Morning Mingle talk show. I nearly dropped the phone. The Morning Mingle was one of the biggest morning shows in the country, known for its mix of celebrity interviews and human interest stories that often went viral. I had watched it for years, always with a fresh cup of coffee in hand, never imagining I'd be a topic of discussion on it. I saw your post, Linda continued, her voice full of an energy that could make you want to sprint a marathon. It's powerful. It's exactly the kind of story we need to be telling right now. It touches on something so deeply personal, so universally relatable. The betrayal, the injustice, the sheer audacity of it all. We want you on the show, Elaine. My mind raced. This was a gift, a way to tell my story to millions. It was a chance to fight back on a stage bigger than my dusty old social media page. But it was also terrifying. I was just a woman from the suburbs, a retired art teacher. I was no celebrity, no public figure. My private pain was about to become public spectacle. But what choice did I have? My son and his wife had left me with nothing but my story. It was my only weapon. What would I need to do? I asked, my voice a little shaky, but my resolve firming with every beat of my heart. You'd fly out to New York, all expenses paid. We'd put you up in a nice hotel. You'd come on the show and tell your story. We want it raw and honest, just like your post. We have a legal team that can help you with the civil issues too. Our goal is to expose this kind of behavior, to give people like you a platform to fight back. We're not just a show, Elaine. We're a movement. A movement? I liked the sound of that. It felt less like I was a victim and more like a crusader. This wasn't about revenge anymore. Not really. It was about justice. It was about making sure that what happened to me couldn't be easily swept under the rug. It was about showing Michael and Sarah that actions have consequences, even when they think they've covered their tracks. I accepted her offer. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, travel arrangements, and packing a single suitcase with a few outfits that wouldn't look like I had just been evicted. My small town was buzzing with the news. My friends and neighbors who had seen my post were rallying around me, bringing me casseroles and words of support. The local paper even ran a small article about my story. I was becoming a symbol, a beacon of defiance for every parent who had ever been taken for granted. As I boarded the plane to New York, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. I was stepping into a world I knew nothing about, but I was doing it for a purpose. My son had thought he could erase me, that he could take everything I owned and leave me with nothing. But he was wrong.
He had left me with the one thing that truly mattered, my voice, and I was about to use it to its full power.
The bright lights of the morning mingle studio were a world away from the quiet, familiar comfort of my home. Linda, the producer, had me in a small, well-lit room, giving me a pep talk before my segment. "Just be yourself, Elaine," she said, her voice a calm anchor in the swirling chaos. "Tell your story from the heart. That's what people connect with." I nodded, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. I was wearing a simple blue dress, a color Linda had chosen to make me look approachable and trustworthy. I felt like an actress in a play, about to step onto a stage I never auditioned for. The host, a woman with a warm, genuine smile and kind eyes, introduced me. "Our next guest is Elaine Harrison, a woman who, in a beautiful act of love, donated her kidney to her son. But what happened next will absolutely shock you." The camera lights came on, and I was on. I took a deep breath and began to speak, my voice surprisingly steady. I started with the kidney donation, the love and sacrifice that had motivated me. I described the joy of seeing my son healthy again, the feeling that I had given him a second chance at life. And then I moved on to the betrayal. I told them about Michael and Sarah's visit, the coldness in their eyes, and the chilling pronouncement that they had sold my house. I described signing the papers in a haze of post-op pain, trusting my son implicitly. I talked about the trailer they had found for me and the casual way they dismissed my art as just a bunch of old paintings. The host listened, her expression shifting from sympathy to open outrage. She wasn't just a host, she was a conduit for the audience's emotions. "So let me get this straight," she said, her voice low and incredulous. "You gave your son a life-saving organ, and he repaid you by taking your home and your life savings?" "He took my home," I corrected, my voice firm. "He took my memories. He took the future I had planned. He had me sign over the deed when I was at my most vulnerable. He saw me as a means to an end." The segment went viral before it was even over. My phone, which Linda had given to an assistant, was buzzing nonstop. The social media comments were a torrent of fury. "Unbelievable," one person tweeted. "This is a new low for humanity," another posted. "Give this woman her house back," a third demanded. The show even had a lawyer on standby who immediately offered to take my case pro bono. "What he did, Elaine, is a clear case of fraud and elder exploitation," the lawyer said, looking directly at me through the camera. "We're going to fight this." After the segment, Linda came over and hugged me. "You were incredible," she said, her eyes shining. "The response is massive. This is going to be everywhere." I felt a mix of relief and a profound sense of exhaustion. I had done it. I had told my story. I had exposed their cruelty to the world. And for the first time since that terrible day, I felt like I had taken back some of the power they had so carelessly stolen. But as I sat there, the adrenaline wearing off, a new feeling began to set in. It wasn't triumph. It was a deep, aching sadness. I had won a battle, but at what cost? I had a lawyer, a voice, and the support of millions. But I no longer had a son. He had made his choices, and I had made mine. The world had seen what he did to me, but no one could ever truly understand the emptiness I felt, the loss of the relationship I had once cherished. I had given him my kidney and my home. He had given me a broken heart. The trade, it seemed, was anything but fair. My televised story had exposed my son, but the fallout was about to become far more complicated than I could have ever imagined. He and his wife were about to get a taste of their own medicine, and the next chapter would reveal a secret they had been hiding all along. The media frenzy following my appearance on Morning Mingle was more intense than I could have ever imagined. My face was on every major news outlet, my story a trending topic on social media. The public had taken my side with a ferocity that was both humbling and terrifying. A GoFundMe was set up by a complete stranger, raising a shocking amount of money within hours. People were not just donating, they were leaving comments of support, sharing my story, and demanding justice. It was a beautiful and overwhelming show of human kindness. But as the saying goes, what goes up must come down. The lawyer from the show, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Brenda, had already filed a lawsuit on my behalf. The legal battle was just beginning, but Michael was not taking this lying down. The media had turned on him with a vengeance. He went from a successful businessman to a pariah overnight. His carefully curated social media presence was now a wasteland of hateful comments and angry emojis. His business reviews tanked, his friends were abandoning him, and his reputation was in tatters. He called me again, his voice no longer furious but desperate. "Mom, please," he pleaded, the familiar tremor of panic I knew so well from his childhood in his voice. "You have to stop this. You're ruining me. You're ruining Sarah's life." "You did that, Michael," I said, my voice as cold as ice. "You signed a death warrant for your own reputation the moment you tricked me into giving me my home. I'm just holding up the mirror." "But Mom, the lawsuit and the media," he whined. "What about our family? Our future? How can you do this to your own son?" I laughed, a humorless sound that surprised even me. "I did a lot for my son. I gave him my kidney, my home, and my unconditional love. But that son is gone, Michael. The man I'm talking to now is a stranger. You showed me who you were when you sold my house for a few extra dollars, and you showed me who you are now, complaining that the consequences are inconvenient for you." "But Mom, we need this house," he pleaded, the desperation in his voice now palpable. "Sarah, she's pregnant. She's due in a few months. We need a proper house for the baby." My breath caught in my throat. Pregnant. My mind reeled. A grandchild. My son's child. My heart, which I thought had been irrevocably hardened by his betrayal, softened a tiny, treacherous bit. A part of me, the part that had longed for a family, wanted to believe him, but the part that had been so cruelly betrayed was on high alert. I remembered Sarah's dismissive comments about my home, the sudden need for more space that had sprung up after my surgery. It all clicked into place. They hadn't wanted my house because they needed it for a future family. They had needed it because their future family was already on the way, and they needed my money and my property to build their life. My life be damned. "Congratulations," I said, my voice flat. "I hope you have a beautiful baby. But my home isn't for sale. Not to you, not ever." He hung up, the line going silent, leaving me alone with my thoughts. A grandchild, a new life, the cycle of love and sacrifice starting all over again, and I was on the outside looking in. The sadness was a physical ache, a raw wound. I had no doubt that a part of Michael would always be the boy I raised, the one who needed a kidney. But that boy was now buried under a mountain of greed and selfishness, and I, his mother, had to be the one to remind him of the difference. The news of Sarah's pregnancy changed everything. Michael and Sarah thought this was their trump card, their way to guilt me into silence. They had no idea that their lie was about to unravel and expose a dark truth that would leave them with nothing. My lawyer, Brenda, was a bulldog in a pantsuit. She was a woman who clearly lived for the fight, and my case, with its viral fame and shocking details, was her new favorite. "The pregnancy news," she said, her voice a low rumble over the phone, "is a tactical move, a play for sympathy. Don't fall for it." "How can I not?" I asked, a tremor in my voice. "It's a baby, my grandchild." "It's a manipulation," Brenda stated flatly. "They're using it to try and guilt you into dropping the lawsuit. It's a classic strategy, but we have a better one."
She had spent the last 2 days digging into Michael and Sarah's finances, and what she found was more shocking than any of us could have imagined. Michael wasn't the successful businessman he pretended to be. His company was a failing shell, hemorrhaging money. He had taken out a massive business loan, one that he had defaulted on. The lawsuit from the bank was already in motion. The only thing keeping them afloat, Brenda explained, was the prospect of selling your house. They were planning to use the profit to pay off the bank and keep their little house of cards from collapsing. The truth was a cold, hard slap in the face. It wasn't just greed, it was desperation. They hadn't just wanted my house, they had needed it. My kidney had saved Michael's life, and in their minds, that debt was so huge that my house was just collateral, a small price to pay to keep their world from falling apart. I was an object, a resource to be exploited, not a mother to be cherished. Brenda had a plan. "We're going to use this against them," she said, her voice sharp with a vindictive glee. "We're going to file for a temporary restraining order on the sale of the house, citing elder abuse and financial exploitation. We'll use your newfound public platform to put pressure on the bank, to show them that they are enabling your son's actions. The media loves a story of corporate greed and family betrayal. We'll give them a headline they can't resist." The next day, Brenda held a press conference. I was there, but I was just a face in the crowd. Brenda was the star of the show, a whirlwind of legal jargon and righteous indignation. She laid out the facts in a calm, measured voice. The fraudulent signing of the deed, the business loan Michael had defaulted on, the secret pregnancy that had been used as a lever to manipulate me. The reporters scribbled furiously, their cameras flashing. "This isn't just about a mother and son," she said, her voice rising. "This is about a system that allows vulnerable people to be exploited for personal gain. My client, Elaine Harrison, gave a part of herself to save her son's life, and he repaid her by trying to sell her home out under her, all to save his own failing business. It's a moral and legal travesty, and we're not going to stand for it." The story blew up. The narrative had shifted from a simple family drama to a larger story of corporate fraud and social injustice. The bank, fearing a public relations nightmare, called Brenda immediately. They offered to settle, to back off from their lawsuit against Michael in exchange for a private resolution to the dispute over my house. But Brenda wasn't done yet. She wasn't just going to settle. She was going to demand a public apology from Michael and Sarah. She was going to make them face the music. And I, the woman they had tried to erase, was going to be there to watch it all. They had played their last card, but they had no idea that I had a final, devastating move of my own. The house was just the beginning. The real battle was for the truth, and I was about to expose a secret that would change everything.
The press conference and the ensuing legal action sent shockwaves through the quiet, affluent community where my son and his wife lived. The neighborhood, a place defined by its manicured lawns and polite pretenses, was suddenly buzzing with whispers and accusations. Michael and Sarah were no longer the golden couple. They were pariahs. Their carefully constructed lives, built on a foundation of lies and my hard-earned money, were crumbling before their eyes. The legal process moved with a surprising swiftness, fueled by the relentless media attention. The lawyer, Brenda, was a force of nature. She had the bank's lawyers on the ropes, using their fear of public outrage as her primary weapon. She had them cornered, and she wasn't letting up. The bank agreed to back off on their loan to Michael, and in a private settlement, they also agreed to put a temporary hold on the sale of my house. The tide was turning, but I knew the fight was far from over. Then I got the call that I had both dreaded and secretly longed for. The phone rang, and I saw a local number, one I hadn't seen in months. It was a friend of Michael's, a man named Robert, who had been a close confidant since childhood. He was calling to tell me something he had been holding on to, something he couldn't keep to himself anymore. "Elaine," he said, his voice hesitant and strained, "I'm so sorry. I know this is going to be hard to hear, but you need to know the truth. Michael, he's been lying about everything." I held my breath.
a cold knot forming in my stomach. I thought I had already heard the worst of it, but as Robert spoke, the true depth of my son's deceit came to light. The pregnancy. It was a lie. Sarah wasn't pregnant. They had fabricated the story, a last-ditch effort to elicit sympathy from me, to save their reputation and their failing finances. My heart shattered all over again, but this time the pain was different. It wasn't the sharp, stabbing pain of betrayal, but a deep, hollow ache of finality. This lie was different from the others. The others were about greed and convenience. This one was about a complete and utter lack of humanity. They had used the hope of a grandchild, a symbol of life and legacy, as a weapon. They had used my deepest desire against me. I thanked Robert for his courage and hung up the phone. I sat there in silence, surrounded by the remnants of my life, the half-packed boxes, the empty walls, the memories that now felt tainted. The legal battle was going my way, but the personal victory felt hollow. I had a chance to get my house back, but I had lost my son forever. The man I knew, the boy I raised, had become a stranger, a ghost. My lawyer, Brenda, had a plan for the final public showdown, a televised face-to-face meeting with Michael and Sarah. It was a chance for them publicly to apologize, to right their wrongs, to admit their lies. But now, with this new information, the stakes had changed. I wasn't just fighting for a house anymore. I was fighting for the truth, for the public record, for the memory of the son I had once known. I was going to confront them, not with rage, but with the cold, hard facts. And I was going to do it in front of the entire world. My son and his wife had one last chance to do the right thing, but they had no idea that I knew about their ultimate lie. You won't believe what they said when I confronted them and how their public reckoning changed everything.
The television studio was a sea of tension. The set was a minimalist space with 2 armchairs facing each other, a neutral backdrop, and the unforgiving glare of the studio lights. Michael and Sarah were sitting in one chair, their faces pale and drawn. He was fidgeting with his hands, and she was staring straight ahead, a defiant mask on her face. In the other chair sat me, my heart pounding a furious rhythm against my ribs. The host, the same kind-eyed woman from my first appearance, introduced the segment with a somber tone. After a viral story and a lawsuit, Michael and Sarah Harrison are here to face the mother they allegedly betrayed. And Elaine, after all this, is here to confront her son. The host started with Michael, her voice firm. Michael, you've been accused of a grave betrayal. What do you have to say? Michael's voice was a shaky whisper. I made a mistake. I never meant to hurt my mom. The house, it was a business decision. I'm so sorry, Mom. He looked at me, a flicker of genuine regret in his eyes. And what about the pregnancy, Sarah? The host asked, turning to my daughter-in-law. The baby you claimed you were having? Sarah's defiance finally cracked. She turned to me, her eyes filled with tears. We were desperate, Elaine, she said, her voice trembling. We were losing everything. We thought it would make you see our side. A lie, I stated, my voice cutting through the air. You used the hope of a grandchild as a weapon against me, a weapon to manipulate and guilt me into giving you my life savings and my home. Michael's face flushed. He was a cornered animal, and he was about to lash out. You don't understand, he spat, his voice no longer apologetic but full of rage. You've been a ghost my entire life. All you cared about was your art. You were never there for me. The accusation was a vicious stab to the heart. My mind reeled back, a flood of memories washing over me. The late nights I spent helping him with his homework. The weekends I drove him to soccer practice. The hours I spent in the hospital, waiting, worrying, praying for his recovery. The ultimate sacrifice I had made. The kidney. I looked him in the eye, and the anger, the sorrow, and the betrayal all came to a head. I gave you my kidney, Michael, I said, my voice rising. I gave you a part of my body, a part of my life. I gave you a future, and you sold my home." Michael's face crumpled. He had no defense. He had no words. He had been so focused on his own narrative of victimhood that he had completely forgotten the one undeniable truth. I had given him a piece of myself, literally, for his survival, and he had tried to erase me in return. The host, sensing the weight of the moment, turned to me. "Elaine, you've won. The lawsuit is going your way. The public is on your side. What's next?" I looked at Michael and Sarah, a profound sadness settling in my heart. They had nothing left. No home, no money, no reputation, and most importantly, no family. I had fought for my dignity and my home, and I had won. But the victory felt hollow. I had a house, but I had lost my son. I had exposed their lies, but I had lost the family I had always dreamed of. This wasn't a happy ending. It was a tragic one. I took a deep breath, looked directly into the camera, and spoke my final words. "I am going to get my house back. I'm going to go home, and I'm going to finish my paintings, and I'm going to live a life filled with purpose, surrounded by people who love and respect me. And maybe, one day, I'll be able to forgive." The show ended, the credits rolled, and I was left alone in the silent studio. The battle was over, the war was won, but the peace I felt was a fragile one, a silence born not of contentment, but of loss. I had stood up for myself, and I had won back my dignity, but the price had been my family.